Good evening everyone. Today we are going to talk about Tu B'Av, the 15th of Evanu. We did not say Ta'anyun today during Minha, and tomorrow as well we will not say Ta'anyun all day, because there were no days as joyful for the Jewish people. One of the happiest days was Tu B'Av. What happened on Tu B'Av? Why did this special date of Tu B'Av suddenly come about? On Tu B'Av, there are several reasons why we rejoice. The first reason, the deaths of those in the wilderness ceased. In plain terms, every single year since the sin of the spies, a portion of the Jewish people passed away. When did they pass away? Tisha B'Av was when the sin of the spies occurred, so every Tisha B'Av Eve, they would dig, the entire generation of the wilderness dug their own graves. In the morning, whoever stood up, whoever didn't stand up, they covered him. You just need to use guided imagery to picture what went on there. In the evening, the whole family would say goodbye to one another. That's it, tomorrow morning, you'll soon know who gets up. So on Tisha B'Av Eve, they would dig the graves. The entire generation of the wilderness would enter the graves, and on Tisha B'Av day itself, whoever stood up, whoever didn't stand up, they covered him. That was his burial in the wilderness. That's how it went on for 39 years. In the 40th year, they did the same thing, and then each man and his wife went back to their homes, and everyone got up. They thought that perhaps they had made a mistake in counting the days, until Tu B'Av arrived and they realized, that's it, we didn't make a mistake. Why didn't we make a mistake? Because you see the moon in its full shape, the moon is round, so we definitely didn't make a mistake, it's the middle of the month. So they knew that the Holy One, blessed be He, had mercy on them, and they were not dying. Because of this, Moses our teacher thought that he, too, would enter the land. Therefore, Moses prayed so many prayers to enter the land, that is Parashat Ve'etchenen, 515 TTU prayers, corresponding to the numerical value of Ve'etchenen. The Pni Yehoshua calculates that excluding Shebeot and festivals, it wasn't that he prayed 515 special extra prayers, but rather in the regular prayers, 3 prayers every day, Moses prayed and begged for mercy upon himself to enter the land. So that is one reason on Tu B'Av why we rejoice, that the deaths of those in the wilderness ceased. Yes, Yoav Haim, so were there some who didn't die, who were from the generation of the wilderness. In the final year, they didn't die. Who entered the land from the generation of the wilderness? Here's a riddle, who entered the land? Into the land, to Tel Aviv, only to that we know of. No, correct. Who entered? Caleb and Joshua, who were not part of the sin of the spies. Some say that women were also not part of the sin of the spies. Women were not, meaning, according to what we just said, the final group, that was women. No, besides the women were not involved at all. No, but the final group, meaning some remained. Some remained, including the final group. Come, let's go over it again. Who didn't die as a result of the sin of the spies? Who didn't die? Joshua and Caleb. In the final year, some say that women didn't sin at all in the sin of the spies, so they didn't pass away and weren't included in that punishment at all, and some say that also applied to the tribe of Levi. And the priests, Kohanim. They didn't either. Also anyone under the age of 20. Yes, of course. Also anyone over the age of 60. Anyone who was without sin. So some of them did enter the land, and therefore Moses thought that he, too, would enter the land, even though the Holy One, blessed be He, told him no. But Moses thought so. So that is one reason we mark the joyful day of Tu B'Av, that the deaths of those in the wilderness ceased. Second reason, the tribes were permitted to intermarry with one another. In plain terms, we know that the daughters of Zelophehad, after receiving an inheritance in the land, wanted to get married. So members of their tribe came and said, no way. If they marry, our tribe's portion of the inheritance will be diminished. Why? Because who inherits the women? Their husbands. According to Torah law, when a woman passes away, who inherits her? Her husband. So if she passes away, say she was from the tribe of Manasseh and married into the tribe of Judah, then all the land portions of Zelophehad's family would transfer from the tribe of Manasseh to the tribe of Judah. And then the Holy One, blessed be He, commanded that they should not intermarry, but only marry members of their own tribe. So when were the tribes permitted to intermarry with one another? On Tu B'Av. That is to say, on Tu B'Av, after the incident of the concubine at Gibeah. We will talk about the concubine at Gibeah in a moment. The tribes were permitted to intermarry with one another. In plain terms, afterwards, wait a second, a woman from the tribe of Judah could marry a man from the tribe of Benjamin. Why were they no longer concerned about land transfer? Because by then, the individual land portions were small. Here you are discussing the foundation, 600,000 acres, so the land portions were relatively large, leading to major land shifts. Once the Jewish people multiplied, each person's individual land portion was actually relatively small. Who wanted to ask something? Yes. Was the restriction on everyone, or only on daughters who inherit? On everyone. There was a restriction. In a tribe, if there are daughters who inherit, you don't know. You don't know. No one knows if his only daughter will inherit, if she has a brother, and suddenly there's no brother. Does anyone promise him, does anyone promise someone that he'll have a brother, or how his children will turn out? No one promises. Right? Sons are born to a person, but no one knows. At the time of the wedding, does anyone promise anything? No one promises him. So the restriction was sweeping. The restriction was sweeping, that daughters inherit. The whole concern was that daughters inherit. In parallel to this, along similar lines, it's not directly related, one of the great Rishonim, early authorities, was named Rabbi Newtem. Rabbi Newtem's personal name was Rabbi Jacob, the grandson of Rashi. Why was he called Rabbi Newtem? He wasn't naive. Tem didn't study in a Chabad yeshiva. What? You said that. So we see there is another verse written, and your strength shall be spent in vain, vetam like kochechem. In plain terms, a person wants to marry off his daughter. He works to give her a dowry. In the end, the daughter gets married and she might pass away from the world without offspring. She might pass away without offspring, and then everything he worked for was spent in vain. To whom does it go? To the groom. He wins the whole jackpot. His wife, he doesn't want his wife to die, but sometimes it happens. It happened that women passed away quite young for various reasons, God forbid. And then all the money the father invested in his daughter, all the dowries, and these were large dowries, transferred to whom? To the groom. So Rabbi Newtem came and instituted, what? No. If the bride dies without offspring, there are various versions of these enactments. I was asked how Chazal, the sages, there is an enactment named after the place where they enacted it, and he instituted that if the bride dies without offspring, then everything, at least in the first 2 years after the wedding, returns, either entirely or partially, to whom? To her father. It returns to her father, so that your strength shall not be spent in vain. On the same principle, a person works, and essentially all his property transfers to someone else, right? Rabbi Newtem came and stopped it. Okay. He made enactments so this wouldn't happen. This appears in the Tosafot on Ketabat and it appears in the Shalchan Aruch that such a thing existed. Today it's no longer. I don't think it exists, nor does this. Fine, let's not get into inheritance laws. Third reason why we mark Tu B'Av, the men of Benjamin were permitted to join the congregation after the incident of the concubine at Gibeah. After the incident of the concubine at Gibeah, the Jewish people swore not to give their daughters in marriage to the tribe of Benjamin. They had no brides, and they came and said that, God forbid, the tribe of Benjamin might be wiped out. If there are no brides, there are no offspring, if there are no offspring, the tribe is gone. So what did they tell them? On Tu B'Av, when the young women go out dancing, seize yourselves wives. And then the men of Benjamin were permitted to join the congregation. That is the third reason. Fourth reason for Tu B'Av, the day they stopped bringing the wood offering. In plain terms, for the temple, besides bringing sacrifices, they needed wood. Everyone knows that if he doesn't have a gas grill or an electric grill, to draw a distinction, he needs, to do a barbecue, he needs to have what? Wood. He needs there to be coals. Who donated wood for the altar's pyre? There were several families who donated wood for the altar's pyres. They needed to receive fairly large quantities of wood, and alongside donating the wood, they also brought a thanksgiving offering for being privileged to volunteer for this mitzvah. Just like there are places where you volunteer for something, you don't just volunteer for it, you pay to volunteer for it. Have you heard of that, Rabbi Yoav Haim? No. Among the Moroccans, they had righteous men, truly righteous men, and whoever wanted to light a candle at the Tzeddik's grave, no, not the grave, to light a candle for the Tzeddik, paid for it. Also, I think at the cave of the patriarchs, Merah Mashpelah, if you want to light the perpetual oil lamp there, they will also charge you money. If you want to donate a Torah scroll to the western wall, then besides the Torah scroll you are donating, they will also ask you for money. Okay, why? Sandekship, Sandakaut. Sandekship is something else, there you are doing it for yourself. But here, you are ostensibly donating something to the public, and they tell you, no, that's not enough, donate something more. Along similar lines, it's not exactly the same. Those people, those families who donated the wood brought a thanksgiving offering for having been privileged to offer and donate wood to the temple. So especially on Tu B'Av, wait a second, specifically among Moroccans. I don't know, all of the Jewish people, not necessarily, also over there among our cousins, I don't know either. Alright, so what is special about Tu B'Av? The wood for the altar pyre had to be free of worms. On Tu B'Av, according to the tradition of Chazal, the sun reaches the peak of its strength. Now, from here on out, the strength of the sun begins to decline. Although this year, seemingly, it isn't like that, and many years, seemingly, it isn't like that. I won't get into that, whether in quantity or quality, it doesn't matter. According to the tradition of Chazal, Tu B'Av is the peak of the sun. Until then, the sun gets stronger and stronger, and then it goes down, and then there is a concern that the wood for the pyre will become infested with worms, which invalidates it for the altar. Therefore, they stopped bringing wood for the pyre to the temple. So didn't they have young priests, Perach Kahana, who would check the wood? They would check, but even you, when you buy lettuce for a salad, you buy lettuce for a salad, and then, you also check a little. It says there to check, doesn't it? Do you buy lettuce for a salad? My wife buys it. Your wife buys it. If you buy lettuce, then for your wife, too, it says there to check. I don't check, but that's what's written. To check, so that in this as well, you ultimately check. And what is the reason to rejoice? That they stopped bringing wood for the pyre. No, that is precisely the thanksgiving offering, they supplied the wood for the pyre for the year. Was it because they had more time to study Torah? That reason doesn't ring a bell to me, that now there is more time to study Torah. That reason doesn't ring a bell to me. That reason doesn't ring a bell to me. They brought the final offering of the wood for the pyre, we broke the scythe, the axe. Well, it could be that the reason is Torah study. It could be, but I don't know if that's the reason. It could be, I don't remember. It could be, I don't remember, I really don't remember. Final reason why we rejoice on Tu B'Av, because the slain of Beitar were brought to burial. Not only were they brought to burial, wait a second, right, another reason, right. Right, wait a second, right, you are correct. Right. Obviously, right, what Rabbi Baruch is saying is correct. We know that Jeroboam son of Nebat set up 2 altars, shrines, one in Beit El and one in Dan, and he did not allow those who wanted to go up to Jerusalem to go up. There was enforcement of idolatry, there was coercion of idolatry, like our brothers try to coerce us today, a type of, not idolatry, but a type of coercion. So Hoshea son of Elah came and abolished the decree. The decree was abolished on Tu B'Av, not that he abolished the shrines of idolatry, but what did he do? He granted free choice. He granted free choice. Okay, if you want, go here, if you want, go there. But that was also a virtue and it was also a joy. The final thing that we emphasize the very most is that the slain of Beitar were brought to burial during the Bar Kokhba revolt. During the Bar Kokhba revolt, the city of Beitar was destroyed, and the Romans, may their name be blotted out, left the corpses of the people of Beitar just as they were. There are opinions that say there were thousands there, there are opinions that it was for a period of 7 years, and there was a double miracle there, one, that they did not rot, stink, and second, that they were brought to burial, that is, HaTov v'Ametiv, who is good and bestows good. In memory of this, they also instituted a blessing, the blessing of HaTov v'Ametiv. And in the remaining time, whatever we manage, I will talk a little about the blessing of HaTov v'Ametiv. Before that, we know that the classic blessing of HaTov v'Ametiv appears where? In Birkat Hamazon, Grace after meals, it is the 4th blessing. So first of all, HaTov, who is good, that they did not rot, and v'Ametiv, and bestows good, that they were brought to burial. Chazal instituted a 4th blessing in Birkat Hamazon in which we say HaTov v'Ametiv. Who instituted the first 3 blessings? Chazal say in the Gemara in Berachot, Moses instituted the blessing of Hazan, who feeds, corresponding to the manna. In the merit of Moses our teacher, the manna came down, so Moses instituted the blessing of Hazan. The second blessing, El Haaretz, for the land, was instituted by Joshua. Joshua merited to bring the Jewish people into the land of Israel, so the blessing of El Haaretz was composed by Joshua son of Nun. The third blessing, Bon Yerushalayim, builder of Jerusalem, was composed by David and Solomon. Why? Because they merited to develop Jerusalem, not just the temple. David conquered Jerusalem and bought Jerusalem, and King Solomon built the temple. The 4th blessing is the blessing of HaTov v'Ametiv, which was given when the slain of Beitar did not rot and were brought to burial. The Chassam Sofer asks, and following him the Rav Kook, of blessed memory also asks, the Jewish people had many miracles, why wasn't a special blessing instituted for those? Why specifically for this? And this miracle, while it is an important miracle, I don't minimize it in the slightest. Today, if you leave a piece of meat out for a few days outside the fridge, it immediately rots on you, the whole house stinks, right? The whole house stinks. So how much more so when there were thousands of slain people there with their blood, and they didn't rot. That was a great miracle. According to Jewish law, related or not, if a person passes away and remains outside for 3 days, stays without refrigeration, without freezing for 3 days, you cannot testify that it's him. You cannot testify that it's him, because the whole body changes completely. You cannot testify that it's him, that is written in the Gemara in Ibamot. If a person stayed for 3 days without water, without anything, after 3 days you cannot testify that it's him. Why? Everything changes. I asked if that applies to a dead body, right? I'm not that much of an expert. A Jewish man came to our kollel once who was a chief superintendent, an expert in body identification, and that was his role, body identification. He told me, yes, after 3 days it's completely lost. He was sent to identify in various disasters and things like that. He says after 3 days you can't know anything, except, of course, through DNA or fingerprints, that yes, but seeing that it's so and so by his face, you can't. And that results from all kinds of chemical phenomena of changes in the corpse. And there it was for several years, in the heat, they were thrown like dung on the face of the earth, and they didn't rot. That was a great miracle by all accounts. Nevertheless, despite this entire miracle, why specifically for this did they institute a blessing? So the Chassam Sofer and Rav Kook say that they established the same principle. The Jewish people are about to go into exile, they are already on the way to exile, to the second exile, which we hope is the last exile. According to the tradition of Chazal, this is the last exile. Thank God we have returned home, but the Jewish people were going into exile. And they had nothing to hold on to, no hope. You don't know when you are returning, you don't know when the end will be, you don't know, you are in a question mark. Chazal instituted for them, guys, always recite the final blessing, the blessing of Hatov V'Ametiv, and know, just as these corpses that stayed outside without burial did not rot for several years and there was hope for them, so too you will have hope. Don't despair, never despair, don't despair. That is what they wanted to instill, so say the Chassam Sofer and the Rav of blessed memory, that this was the goal for which Chazal instituted the fourth blessing, besides the thanksgiving for the miracle itself. They also instituted a blessing here so that you remember and internalize within yourself, we have hope, we have hope. Okay, and that's why they also sing it in the anthem, right? Listen, they don't give up. The hope of 2000 years, isn't that how they sing it in the anthem? No, you forgot, only on Independence Day do they sing the anthem. Our hope is not yet lost. Our hope is not yet lost. The hope of 2000 years, there is hope. Where is the hope embedded? In the fourth blessing there. Remember, those corpses had hope. Look, now here too there is hope. So thank God, we have returned home. So Chazal instituted the blessing of Hatov V'Ametiv in Birkat Hamazon, in the blessing over an abundance of wine, and also as a blessing of thanksgiving if you buy something or inherit something, not just you, but someone along with you. You buy an appliance for the home, you bought a new car, you bought a new pot, you bought an iRobot, all kinds of, it's a robot, he bought the dishwasher. For whom is the dishwasher? For me, for my wife, for the whole family, depends on who washes dishes at home. So if the whole family washes, then it's for the whole family, so if it's for the whole family, one needs to recite Hatov V'Ametiv. And this is a parenthetical note, during the 3 weeks, the Shulchan Aruch writes not to wear a new garment, people are accustomed not to recite Shehekiono. The Vilna Gaon, Gra, disagrees with him regarding the wording of Shehekiono. Regarding the occasion, we recite Shehekiono over the new item, over the new fruit, over the new object, over the new garment, over that thing we recite Shehekiono, not over the time period do we recite Shehekiono. He disagrees with the Shulchan Aruch, the Vilna Gaon. Hatov V'Ametiv, can you recite it? The answer is yes. The wording is less, not that the wording is less, but you don't say, Shehekiono v'kiamenu v'jianu, at all. During this time, you say Hatov V'Ametiv. You say Hatov V'Ametiv. So if a person, usually, if a person doesn't buy personal items for himself, like a new garment or a new fruit that only he eats, but if he buys for himself, someone asked me, he bought a car, can he, without the issue of simena miltha, an omen, that maybe it's not good to buy during these days, and so on. Let's not get into that. From the standpoint of the blessing, it depends. You have no problem. You recite the blessing of HaTov v'Ametiv. There is no problem at all reciting the blessing of HaTov v'Ametiv. So we recite, besides HaTov v'Ametiv at home in Birkat Hamazon, we recite HaTov v'Ametiv if a person buys something, not just for himself, but for others as well. If a person inherited, he and others, he recites not Shehekiono, but HaTov v'Ametiv. And also if a person has a child born to him, a son. If a person has a son born to him, he recites HaTov v'Ametiv. If a daughter is born to him, do we recite something or not? Shehekiono. There is a Mishnah Berura that writes an opinion that one should recite Shehekiono, yes. But that is how the Mishnah Berura rules, and Rav Lior, they say Rav Lior used to tell people, you recite, you buy a shirt that costs 50 shekels, you recite Shehekiono, a daughter is born to you, you won't recite Shehekiono for her. Of course you recite Shehekiono for her. Alright, the question is, why did they institute the blessing of HaTov v'Ametiv over 2 wines? How is HaTov v'Ametiv relevant at all to 2 wines? True, there is an abundance of something here, something is multiplied here. HaTov v'Ametiv, you gave me 1 wine, and you also gave me what? A 2nd wine. Excellent. Without getting into the details right now, it doesn't look like we'll have time for details. Why did they institute the blessing of HaTov v'Ametiv here as well? So the Mishnah Berura says in section 175, and other books also wrote a reason for this formula of HaTov v'Ametiv over an abundance of wine, over 2 wines, because it is known that a person must diminish his earthly pleasures, and wine brings joy and can lead to levity. Therefore, they established this formula of HaTov v'Ametiv, because it is known that the blessing of HaTov v'Ametiv in Birkat Hamazon was instituted over the slain of Beitar, who were brought to burial, and through this, he will remember the day of death and will not be drawn after wine too much. Meaning, on the one hand, we thank the Holy One, blessed be He, for the abundance of wine, but on the other hand, Chazal, what? They hinted to you, should you drink a lot of wine? No, you are drawn too much after the vanities of this world. After all, wine is ostensibly what? If it's not needed, wine is a luxury. We usually drink wine at Kiddush, at Havdalah, at celebrations, or give it to a mourner, except for your community, where they give a mourner wine too. But that is very difficult. Right, the Moroccans don't give wine. That is very difficult. Right. On Shabbat, someone makes Kiddush over something, and then he brings out a better bottle of wine, so does he need to think about the slain of Beitar on Shabbat before he drinks the wine? On Shabbat, there is an elevation of the worlds, there is a spiritual elevation. The question is if now the guys are sitting over a bottle of wine just to have fun. That is the question. About that, Chazal came and told you, you are drinking wine for your pleasures, you are allowed to, but remember the day of death, remember, don't drink too much, don't degrade yourself. Chazal didn't forbid it to you, they hinted to you. They were, Chazal, were wise. They knew wine is permitted, sometimes people need to drink wine, that's fine, we are not like the Muslims who forbid it entirely. We are not, that's not us. But they gave you, on the other hand, they gave you a hint, my dear, not too much, remember. In the end, where a person reaches, God willing, that it is discussed, the second wine is superior. The Shulchan Aruch writes, we recite HaTov v'Ametiv over any change of wine as a matter of course, even if one does not know that the second is superior to the first. And today, right when I taught this law in a different forum, I hesitated. After all, there are people who like dry wines, and I don't like them. I personally don't like them. What do I like better? Sweet wine. Sweet wine is cheaper than dry wine. Right, they put what in it? Sugar. They tricked us, but alright. And to me it tastes better. You ask a good question. Leave it, say everything is 100% water, say everything is 100% wine, not 100% water. I already said water, you stumped me, everything is 100% wine, but I don't like the dry wine, what can I do? I don't like it, I have a, what? I don't like it, I don't like it. So he asks, you asked correctly, so the Shulchan Aruch says, as long as you don't know, you can recite Hatov V'Ametiv. For you, it is superior. Yes, but he says that you see that the world drinks expensive wines. And the expensive wines, they claim that it's superior. They say, what do people tell me? You don't understand wine, that's what they claim. I'm fine, I have excuses for that, I claim that their wine is vinegar. Alright, there is a responsa by Rav Lior that was omitted, that if wine doesn't taste good to a person, he shouldn't recite the blessing. He shouldn't recite the blessing, yes. He shouldn't recite the blessing. If you drink wine and it doesn't taste good to you, it doesn't taste good to you, it's not, you are only suffering from it, not enjoying it, then don't recite the blessing. Alright, Rabbi Chananya